Commander Lyra Veltar stood on the bridge of her ship, watching her world burn. Through the crystal windows she could see the beautiful blue oceans of Kepler Forum 42b turning red with fire. The floating cities that had taken her people thousands of years to build were falling from the sky like broken glass. Her hands shook as she gripped the command chair. The Zelhari were not built for war. Their bodies looked like living crystal, clear and bright, reflecting light in rainbow colors. They were peaceful people who spent their days creating art and music. They had never hurt anyone in their long history. But the Vorthak did not care about peace. The enemy ships looked like giant insects made of black metal. They moved through space in terrible swarms, eating everything in their path. When they took a world, nothing was left alive. The Vorthak turned peaceful people into twisted monsters that fought for them. It was a fate worse than death. "Commander, we have lost contact with the northern cities," said her second officer, Kalen. His crystal body was dim with fear. The Vorthak are landing more troops every hour. Lyra closed her eyes and tried not to think about her daughter, Mira, who lived in one of those northern cities. She had not heard from her in 3 days. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 12, Commander. The rest are destroyed or captured. 12 ships against thousands. It was hopeless, but Lyra could not give up. Not while her people were still alive down there, fighting and dying. "Send another message to the Galactic Council," she ordered. "Tell them we need help now, or there will be nothing left to save." Kalen's face grew even dimmer. "Commander, they have already answered. The Altarian Republic says the risk is too great. The Centauri Federation will not risk their fleet for us. The Andromedan Alliance voted to seal their borders until the Vorthak threat passes." Lyra felt her heart break a little more. One by one, every great civilization in the galaxy had turned away from them. They all said the same thing. The Vorthak were too dangerous, too strong, too many. It was better to let one world die than risk their own people. She understood their fear. The Vorthak had destroyed 47 worlds in the past 10 years. Each time other civilizations had watched and done nothing. They told themselves it was logical. They told themselves it was smart. But logic and smartness would not save her people. "Commander." The voice came from her communications officer, Zara. "Large Vorthak formation approaching from the east. 300 ships." Through the window, Lyra could see them coming. The black ships moved like a disease across the stars, blocking out the light of their sun. At the center of the formation was the biggest ship she had ever seen. It looked like a giant spider made of metal and bone. "That must be their command ship," she whispered. "What are your orders, Commander?" Kalen asked. Lyra looked at her remaining ships, 12 against 300. Her people were good at many things, but fighting was not one of them. They would all die in the next few hours, but maybe their death could mean something. "Send our strongest signal across all frequencies," she said. "Use the planetary transmitter array. I want every civilization in the galaxy to hear this message." "Commander, that will use all our remaining power. We won't have energy for weapons or shields. Do it anyway." Zara's fingers moved across her controls. The ship's lights dimmed as all power went to the communications array. Far below on the planet, the great transmitter towers began to glow with bright energy. Lyra stepped forward and began to speak. "This is Commander Lyra Veltar of the Zelhari Defense Fleet. We are under attack by the Vorthak horde. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have asked for help from every major civilization in the galaxy, and all have refused." She paused, watching the enemy ships get closer. "We do not blame you for your fear. The Vorthak are strong and we are weak, but we ask you to remember that today it is us, and tomorrow it might be you. Evil that is not stopped will only grow stronger." The enemy ships were almost in weapons range now. She could see smaller ships breaking away from the main group, heading straight for her position. "We will fight until our last breath, not because we think we can win, but because it is right. If anyone out there still believes that some things are worth fighting for, please help us. Please do not let our children die alone in the dark." The transmission ended. The ship's power came back online, but it was too late. The Vorthak ships surrounded them on all sides. "Commander, they are demanding our surrender," Zara reported. Tell them the Zelhari do not surrender. The first enemy shots lit up the darkness of space. Lyra's ship shook as the energy beams hit their shields. Around them, the last few Zelhari ships returned fire, their bright weapons making beautiful patterns against the black enemy hulls. It was a hopeless fight, but it was their fight. One by one, her ships were destroyed. The beautiful crystal hulls broke apart like glass, sending rainbow light across the darkness before going dark forever. Soon, only her ship remained. Hull breaches on all decks, Kalen reported. Life support failing. Any response to our message? Lyra asked. Zara checked her equipment one last time. Nothing, Commander, no one is coming. Lyra nodded sadly. She had not really expected anyone to answer. The galaxy was full of smart, logical people who made smart, logical choices. Helping the Zelhari was not smart or logical. Thank you all for serving with me, she said to her crew. It has been an honor. The Vorthak ship fired one last time. The bridge filled with light, and then everything went dark. But deep in space, the message continued to travel. It reached the great civilizations who had already said no. It reached small worlds that were too weak to help. It reached empty space, where no one lived. And in a small corner of the galaxy, on a little blue planet that most people had never heard of, it reached Earth. Captain Jake Martinez was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. He sat in the command chair of the UNS Defiance, watching the stars through the bridge windows. His ship was on a routine patrol near Proxima Centauri, checking for asteroids that might hit the small mining station there. It was quiet work, and Jake liked it that way. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 6 months. Everything was new and exciting, but also a little scary. They were alone, out here, or so they thought. Captain, called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors. It looks like a signal, but it's not from Earth. Jake put down his coffee cup. What kind of signal? I don't know. Sir, it's very strong, coming from the direction of Vega. The computer is trying to translate it now. Jake felt his heart beat faster. If this was what he thought it was, everything would change. Put it on the main screen. The bridge filled with a strange musical voice. The words were not English, but the computer worked quickly to change them into something they could understand. As the translation came through, Jake felt his blood run cold. It was a cry for help from another world. The voice belonged to someone, called Commander Lyra Veltar. She talked about burning cities and dying people. She talked about an enemy called the Vorthak, who had destroyed dozens of worlds. She talked about how every other civilization in the galaxy had refused to help. When the message ended, the bridge was completely quiet. Sir, Sarah said softly, according to the signal data, this message has been traveling for 3 weeks. Whatever happened to these people? It might already be over. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, people were dying while others watched and did nothing. It made him angry in a way he had not felt since the war in Syria, back when he was still fighting on Earth. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered. Priority 1. Tell them we just received humanity's first contact with alien life, and it's a distress call. The message reached Earth 12 hours later. Admiral Susan Blake was in her office at the United Nations Space Command when the call came in. She was a tough woman who had fought in 3 wars before becoming humanity's first space admiral. Nothing surprised her anymore, but this did. She listened to the alien message 3 times, then called President Kevin Ross. Within 2 hours, an emergency meeting was happening in the UN building in New York. Leaders from every nation sat around a big table listening to the voice of Commander Lyra Veltar asking for help. The signal is 3 weeks old, Admiral Blake explained. By the time we get there, these Zelhari people might all be dead, and we don't know anything about this enemy they're fighting. President Ross was a young man who had been elected because people trusted him to make hard choices. What do we know about our military capabilities in space? Not much, sir. We have 12 ships that can travel between stars. The biggest has only 300 crew members. Against an enemy that has destroyed 47 worlds, we would be badly outmatched. The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, the president of Brazil spoke up. Maybe we should stay out of this. We are new to space travel. We should not get involved in alien wars. Many people nodded. It made sense. Humanity was still learning how to live among the stars. Why risk everything for people they had never met? But President Ross remembered something his grandfather had told him back when he was a boy. His grandfather had fought in World War II, landing on the beaches of Normandy. Sometimes, the old man had said, you have to do what's right even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Admiral Blake, the president said, how long would it take to get to this Zelhari world? 3 weeks, sir. The same. Time it took their message to reach us. And you think we might be too late? Probably, sir, but there's a chance some of them are still alive. Maybe hiding, maybe fighting. If we hurry, we might be able to help. The president looked around the room at all the world leaders. I know this is risky. I know we might be flying into a trap or a war we cannot win. But I keep thinking about that woman's voice asking for help while her world burned. He stood up. Humanity has always had a problem. We cannot walk away when people need help. It has gotten us into trouble before, and it will probably get us into trouble again. But it's also the best thing about us. One by one, the votes were counted. It was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Blake returned to Space Command and began preparing the fleet. Every ship that could travel between stars would go. It was not much, but it was everything they had. Dr. Lisa Park, Earth's best expert on alien life, was brought in to study the message. She was a small woman with big glasses who had spent her whole life wondering if humans were alone in the universe. Now she knew they were not. The Zelhari sound like peaceful people, she told Admiral Blake. They talk about art and music, not weapons and war. This enemy, the Vorthak, they sound like the opposite. They destroy everything they touch. What? Does that tell us about our chances? Blake asked. Dr. Park thought for a moment. Well, humans are different from both groups. We're not as peaceful as the Zelhari, but we're not as destructive as the Vorthak. We're somewhere in the middle. That might be exactly what this situation needs. The ships were loaded with supplies and weapons. 3,000 brave men and women volunteered to crew the vessels knowing they might never see Earth again. Captain Martinez would lead the fleet in the UNS Defiance. Commander Ryan Clark would be his second in command, flying the UNS Vigilant. On the day they left, crowds gathered at the spaceports to watch. Children waved flags while their parents cried. Everyone knew this was history being made. As the ships disappeared into the darkness between stars, Dr. Park made one final note in her research journal. Today, humanity learned we are not alone in the universe. We also learned that being alone might have been safer, but safe was never really our style. 3 weeks later, the human fleet would arrive at a burning world, ready to fight for people they had never met. It was crazy and dangerous and probably hopeless. It was also the most human thing they had ever done. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 4R42 system, and Captain Jake Martinez felt his heart sink. Through the bridge windows of the UNS Defiance, he could see a scene from his worst nightmares. The beautiful, blue world that should have been home to millions of crystal people was covered in dark smoke. Hundreds of black enemy ships swarmed around the planet like angry wasps. Some were as big as cities, their twisted metal hulls covered in spikes and strange growths that pulsed with red light. My God, whispered Lieutenant Sarah Kim. How many ships are there? Computer says over 800, reported the tactical officer. And Captain, some of those things are huge. The biggest one is 20 times larger than our ship. Jake gripped his command chair tighter. When they had left Earth 3 weeks ago, everyone knew this would be dangerous. But seeing it with his own eyes made his stomach turn cold. How could 12 small human ships fight against such a massive enemy force? Captain, called Commander Ryan Clark over the radio from his ship, the UNS Vigilant. Are you seeing this? We're severely outmatched here. I see it, Ryan. But we didn't come all this way to turn around now. Jake took a deep breath and tried to remember his training. During the journey from Earth, They had studied everything they could about the Vorthak. The enemy used fear as a weapon, making their targets panic before the real fighting even started. He would not let that happen to his people. All ships, this is Captain Martinez. Form attack formation Alpha. We're going in. The 12 human ships moved forward toward the planet. They looked like tiny ants approaching a giant's nest. Almost immediately, the nearest Vorthak ships turned toward them. Jake could see dozens of the black vessels breaking away from the main fleet, their weapons charging with evil red light. Incoming transmission, Sarah announced. It's not from the enemy. Someone else is trying to contact us. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was weak and tired, but Jake could hear the desperation in it. The computer quickly translated the alien words into English. Unknown ships. This is Commander Lyra Veltar of the Zelhari Defense Command. You must leave immediately. The Vorthak will destroy you. Please do not waste your lives on a lost cause. Jake looked at Sarah and nodded. She opened a channel back to the alien commander. Commander Veltar, this is Captain Jake Martinez of the United Nations Space Fleet from Earth. We received your distress call. We're here to help. There was a long pause. When Lyra's voice came back, it sounded shocked. Earth? I do not know this world. How many ships do you have? What weapons? 12 ships, Commander. About 3,000 crew members. Total, another pause, even longer this time. Captain Martinez, I appreciate your courage, but you do not understand. The Vorthak have destroyed the fleets of 50 civilizations. Some of those fleets had thousands of ships. How can 12 vessels make any difference? Jake could hear the pain in her voice. This woman had watched her world burn while the galaxy's great powers turned away. Now a tiny fleet from an unknown world had come to help, and she probably thought it was just another cruel joke. Commander, where are you located? We're coming to get you. Captain, no. You must save yourselves. I am on Defense Station 7, but it is surrounded by enemy ships. They are preparing to board us. Jake looked at his tactical display. He could see the space station she was talking about. It was a beautiful crystal structure that looked like a flower made of light. But around it, at least 30 Vorthak ships were closing in like sharks. All ships target the enemy vessels around that station. We're going to clear them a path. Sir, his weapons officer said nervously, those ships are much bigger than us. Our missiles might not even scratch them. Then we'll have to get creative. The first Vorthak ship that attacked them was twice the size of the UNS Defiance. Its hull was covered in sharp spines, and it moved through space like a living thing. Jake watched its weapons charge up, preparing to destroy his ship with one shot. But humans had learned to fight dirty during their long wars on Earth. Fire everything at their weapon ports, Jake ordered. Don't try to destroy the ship, just blind it. The Defiance's missiles struck the enemy vessel's weapon systems just as they were about to fire. The explosions were small, but they hit at exactly the right moment. The alien ship's own energy backfired, causing massive internal damage. It's working, Sarah shouted. The enemy ship is dead in space. Word spread quickly through the human fleet. Within minutes, all 12 ships were using the same tactics. Instead of trying to fight the massive Vorthak vessels head-on, they targeted weak points, weapon systems, and engine ports. It was like a pack of wolves bringing down a giant. The Vorthak had never seen anything like it. They were used to fighting civilized enemies who followed the rules of space combat. But humans did not fight fair. They fought to win. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez led the first boarding party onto a damaged Vorthak ship. He and his 20 Marines moved through the twisted corridors, fighting creatures that looked like a nightmare mix of insect and machine. These things are tough, Tony reported over the radio. But they're not very smart. They keep attacking the same way, even when it doesn't work. The Vorthak had conquered dozens of worlds, but all their previous enemies had been peaceful species like the Zelhari. They had never fought anyone who enjoyed fighting back. While the battle raged in space, Lieutenant Amanda Foster managed to get a communication line to the Zelhari defense station. Commander Veltar, she said, we're going to get you out of there, but we need your help. Can your people fight? Lyra's voice was full of surprise. Fight? We are not warriors, Lieutenant. We are artists and scientists. We build beautiful things, we do not destroy them. Sometimes you have to destroy ugly things to protect beautiful ones, Amanda replied. Can you learn? There was a pause. Then Lyra said something that would change everything. Yes. Yes, we can learn. What do you need us to do? As the human ships carved a path through the enemy fleet, Jake realized something important. The Vorthak were strong and numerous, but they had a weakness. They expected their enemies to be afraid. They expected surrender and panic. They had never met humans before. The rescue of Defense Station 7 was just the beginning. As Jake's fleet pulled the Crystal Station to safety, he could see hope returning to the Zelhari commander's voice. Captain Martinez, Lyra said. Why did you come? Your world is far away. We are strangers to you. Jake thought about all the people back on Earth who had voted to send them here. He thought about his grandfather, who had died fighting for people he had never met in a war on the other side of the world. Commander, he said, where we come from, we have a saying. No one fights alone. For the first time in weeks, Commander Lyra Veltar felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. 3 days after the first battle, Captain Jake Martinez stood in the meeting room aboard Defense Station 7, looking at a holographic map of the Zelhari homeworld. The crystal walls around him showed the damage from the ongoing war. Half. The planet's surface was dark, covered in the twisted structures the Vorthak built wherever they landed. Commander Lyra Veltar sat across from him, her crystal body dim with exhaustion. Next to her was Dr. Lisa Park, who had been studying the Vorthak since the human fleet arrived. The situation is worse than we thought, Dr. Park said, pointing to the dark areas on the map. The Vorthak aren't just conquering territory, they're changing the planet itself. These black zones are spreading like a disease. Jake nodded grimly. How many civilians are still alive down there? Maybe 2 million, Lyra answered softly. There were 20 million before the attack started. Most are hiding in the underground cities, but the Vorthak are hunting them down one by one. What about your military forces? Lyra looked embarrassed. Captain, we never had much of a military. The Zelhari have been peaceful for thousands of years. Our defense fleet was meant to stop asteroids and rescue ships in trouble, not fight. Wars. Jake studied the map more carefully. The human fleet had won several small battles over the past 3 days, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The Vorthak had over 700 ships in the system, and more were arriving every day. Dr. Park, he said, what have you learned about the enemy? The scientist adjusted her glasses and pulled up new information on the holographic display. The Vorthak are a hive mind species. They share thoughts and emotions through some kind of biological network. That's why they coordinate so well in battle. Any weaknesses? That's the interesting part. Their hive mind makes them incredibly efficient when fighting organized, predictable enemies. But it also makes them vulnerable to chaos and confusion. Jake raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Every species they've conquered so far has fought in the same basic way. Large fleets in formation following standard military tactics. The Vorthak have adapted to counter these approaches. But humans, we fight differently. Commander Lyra leaned forward. How are humans different, Dr. Park? You have to understand, Commander. Earth is what we call a death world. Our planet is unusually dangerous compared to most places where intelligent life develops. We have predators, natural disasters, diseases, and constant environmental challenges. That sounds terrible, Lyra said with sympathy. It was, Dr. Park continued. But it also made us into something unique. Humans evolved to be adaptable, creative, and aggressive when necessary. We learned to work together in small groups, but we also learned to think independently. Most importantly, we learned that sometimes you have to fight even when the odds are against you. Jake was beginning to understand. The Vorthak expect their enemies to behave logically, but humans don't always do the logical thing. Exactly. When faced with a superior enemy, most species either surrender or retreat. Humans attack. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Amanda Foster's voice came through the speakers. Captain, we're getting reports from the surface. Colonel Ben Hayes and his ground team have made contact with Zelhari, survivors in the capital city. They're requesting immediate support. Jake stood up. What's the situation down there? The Vorthak have surrounded the city, sir. About 50,000 civilians are trapped inside. Colonel Hayes says he has a plan to break the siege, but he needs help from Commander Veltar's people. Lyra shook her head sadly. My people cannot fight, Lieutenant. We do not know how. Ma'am. Amanda's voice was gentle but firm. Colonel Hayes says they don't need to be soldiers. They just need to be themselves. An hour later, Jake found himself in a transport ship heading for the planet's surface. With him were Dr. Park, Commander Lyra, and 20 human Marines. As they flew through the atmosphere, Jake could see the beautiful crystal spires of Lumen Spire, the Zelhari capital city. But around the city, like a dark ring of disease, were the Vorthak forces. Their bioships had landed and transformed into twisted fortresses. Strange creatures moved between them, part machine and part living nightmare. Colonel Ben Hayes met them at the landing zone. He was a tough veteran who had fought in conflicts all over Earth before joining the space fleet. His weathered face was grim as he briefed them on the situation. The Vorthak have been trying to break into the city for 2 days, he explained. They're using the same tactics they've used on other worlds. Systematic attacks, psychological warfare, trying to make the defenders panic and surrender. Is it working? Jake asked. That's the thing, Captain. It's not. The Zelhari aren't responding the way the Vorthak expect. They're not panicking and they're not giving up. They're just enduring. Commander Lyra looked confused. I do not understand. My people are not warriors. Colonel Hayes smiled for the first time since Jake had met him. No, ma'am, they're not. But they're also not quitters. And that's driving the Vorthak crazy. Dr. Park was studying the enemy positions through binoculars. Colonel, have you noticed anything unusual about the Vorthak behavior? Now that you mention it, yes. They keep repeating the same attacks over and over, even when they don't work. It's like they can't adapt to a situation they haven't seen before. That's their weakness, Dr. Park said excitedly. The hive mind is designed for efficiency, not creativity. When they encounter something unexpected, they can't figure out how to respond. Jake was starting to see the bigger picture. So if we can keep doing unexpected things, we can confuse their entire command structure, Dr. Park finished. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had been listening quietly to the conversation. She was a small woman with the kind of scars that came from fighting in urban warfare back on Earth. Sir, she said to Colonel Hayes, what if we taught the Zelhari some basic guerrilla tactics? Not to make them soldiers, but to make them unpredictable. Commander Lyra looked uncertain. Sergeant, my people have never used violence. It goes against everything we believe. Ma'am, Maria replied respectfully, you don't have to become violent. You just have to survive. And sometimes surviving means fighting back. Over the next several hours, something remarkable happened. Human Marines worked with Zelhari civilians to set up hidden supply caches throughout the city. The Crystal people were amazed at human ingenuity, the way they could turn everyday objects into tools and weapons. You use drinking containers to make explosive devices? Asked a young Zelhari engineer named Taven. Back home, we call them improvised explosive devices, explained Sergeant Tony Rodriguez. The important thing is that the enemy never knows where they'll come from next. As night fell, the humans and Zelhari launched their first coordinated attack. It was unlike anything the Vorthak had ever experienced. Instead of a direct assault, the defenders used hit-and-run tactics. They attacked supply lines, communication centers, and isolated enemy positions. The Vorthak tried to respond with their standard counterattack patterns, but the human-trained Zelhari fighters had already disappeared into the crystal tunnels beneath the city. This is remarkable, Commander Lyra said as she watched the battle from the command center. The Vorthak seem confused. Jake nodded. Dr. Park was right. Their hive mind can't handle chaos. Every time they think they understand our pattern, we change it. The real breakthrough came when Chief Petty Officer Nick Thompson, the fleet's chief engineer, made a discovery while studying captured Vorthak technology. "Captain," he called excitedly over the radio, "I think I've figured out how their hive mind works. It's not just biological. They use some kind of quantum communication network to share information instantly across their entire force. Can we disrupt it? Maybe. But we need to generate a specific type of signal, something chaotic enough to overload their system." Dr. Park looked up from her research tablet. "Nick, what if we broadcast human music and art directly into their network? Our creative expressions are completely random compared to their ordered thinking." Jake felt a grin spread across his face. "Do it." Within an hour, the Vorthak communication network was flooded with human jazz music, abstract paintings, poetry, and random thoughts from the human crew members. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the battlefield, Vorthak forces began to move erratically. Their perfect coordination fell apart as their hive minds struggled to process the chaotic human input. "It's working," Lyra exclaimed. "Their ships are colliding with each other." For the first time since the invasion began, the Vorthak were retreating, not in an organized withdrawal, but in confusion and panic. Jake looked out at the battlefield where humans and Zelhari fought side by side against an enemy that had conquered 47 worlds. For the first time, he began to believe they might actually win. "Commander," he said to Lyra, "I think it's time to take back your world." The massive Vorthak command ship hung in space like a metal mountain covered in spikes and pulsing red veins. Captain Jake Martinez stared at it through the bridge windows of the UNS Defiance, knowing that somewhere inside that nightmare vessel was the creature controlling the entire invasion. "Are you sure about this, Jake?" Commander Ryan Clark's voice came through the radio from his ship, the UNS Vigilant. "That thing is 20 times bigger than anything we've ever fought." Jake checked his weapons one more time. After 5 days of hit-and-run attacks, the human fleet had managed to destroy over 100 enemy ships, but the Vorthak kept bringing in reinforcements. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. "The only way to stop this invasion is to cut off the head," Jake replied. Dr. Park confirmed it. "That ship contains the Vorthak Queen. She's the center of their hive mind. If we can take her out, the whole fleet falls apart." Commander Lyra Veltar's crystal face appeared on the communication screen. Her people had been fighting alongside the humans for days now, and she looked stronger than she had since Jake first met her. "Captain Martinez," she said, "my remaining ships will create a diversion. We will attack their outer defenses while you approach the command vessel." Jake shook his head. "Lyra, your ships aren't built for combat like this. You'll be destroyed." "Perhaps, but my people have learned something from you humans. Sometimes you must risk everything to save what matters most." Before Jake could argue, Chief Petty Officer Nick Thompson called out from his engineering station. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the enemy command ship. I think they're preparing some kind of weapon." Through the bridge windows, Jake could see the command ship's hull beginning to glow with sick green light. Whatever weapon they were charging, it was big enough to destroy every human and Zelhari ship in the system. "All ships," Jake ordered. "Attack formation Delta. We're going in now." The combined human Zelhari fleet moved toward the massive enemy vessel. The 12 human ships led the charge while the remaining Zelhari vessels spread out to attack from different angles. It looked like a school of small fish attacking a whale. The Vorthak responded immediately. Hundreds of smaller ships poured out of the command vessel's hangar bays. Energy beams lit up the darkness of space as the 2 fleets crashed together in the largest battle humanity had ever fought. "Hull breach on Deck 7, called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim as the Defiance shook under enemy fire. "Damage control teams responding." Jake gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Around them, the space battle was chaos. The UNS Vigilant spiraled past, trailing atmosphere from a dozen holes in its hull. But Ryan Clark's ship kept fighting, its weapons blazing at every enemy target. "Captain," Nick Thompson shouted over. "The noise. I'm reading something weird from inside that command ship. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database." "What kind of signatures?" "It's like there's something alive in there. Something really big." Dr. Lisa Park's voice came through the intercom from the science lab. Captain, I think I know what we're dealing with. The Vorthak Queen isn't just the commander of their fleet. She's literally the parent of every Vorthak in this system. If the scans are right, she's the size of a building. Jake felt his stomach turn. He had known this mission would be dangerous, but fighting a creature the size of a building was beyond anything he had imagined. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "we're getting close to the command ship's hull, but their defenses are too strong. We can't punch through." That's when Lieutenant Amanda Foster had an idea that would change everything. "Captain," she said from her position at the communications station, "what if we don't try to break through their defenses? What if we let them capture us?" Jake stared at her. "Amanda, that's suicide." "Not if we're ready for it, sir. The Vorthak always try to capture enemy ships intact so they can study them. If they think we're disabled, they'll bring us inside their ship." "And then?" Amanda smiled grimly. "Then we blow it up from the inside." It was a crazy plan, but it was also perfectly human. No other species in the galaxy would consider letting themselves be captured as a battle tactic. "Do it," Jake ordered. "Shut down all weapons and engines. Make it look like we're dead in space." The Defiance went dark, drifting toward the massive command ship like a piece of space debris. Almost immediately, huge mechanical arms reached out from the enemy vessel's hull and grabbed the human ship. "They're bringing us into their hangar, Bay," Sarah reported. As they were pulled inside the Vorthak ship, Jake could see how truly massive it was. The hangar bay alone was bigger than some cities back on Earth. Strange creatures moved around the floor below, some looking like giant insects, others like walking machines. But at the center of it all was something that made Jake's blood run cold. The Vorthak Queen was enormous, her body a twisted mix of flesh and metal that filled half the hangar. Dozens of tubes and cables connected her to the ship's systems. Her eyes, each one the size of a car, glowed with evil intelligence. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Nick Thompson. The Queen's voice filled their minds, speaking without words in a way that made their teeth ache. "Humans," the voice said, dripping with hatred. "You have caused much trouble for my children, but now you will serve me as all others have served." Jake stood up from his command chair and walked to the window. Looking down at the monster below, he felt the fear that every human felt when facing something bigger and stronger than themselves. But he also felt something else. Anger. "Listen to me, you overgrown bug," he said aloud, knowing the Queen could hear him. "You picked the wrong species to mess with." The Queen's laughter was like breaking glass in their minds. "You are 12 small ships against my fleet of thousands. What can you possibly do?" Jake smiled and pressed a button on his command chair. Throughout the human fleet, every ship that had been captured or disabled suddenly came back to life. Hidden systems activated, weapons powered up, and boarding parties that had been waiting in secret moved into action. The humans had learned something important from fighting the Vorthak. Sometimes the best way to win a war was to make your enemy think they had already won. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez led the first boarding party out of the Defiance and into the Queen's chamber. His Marines moved with practiced efficiency, placing explosive charges at key points around the massive creature. "You cannot kill me," the Queen shrieked as the humans swarmed through her ship. "I am eternal. I am the mother of 1 billion children." "Maybe," Tony replied as he armed the last explosive charge. "But you've never met humans before." The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The massive Vorthak command ship broke, apart like a rotten fruit, taking the Queen and her hive mind with it. Across the star system, every Vorthak ship suddenly stopped moving. Without their Queen to guide them, the drones were lost and confused. Many began attacking each other, unable to tell friend from enemy. Jake watched from an escape pod as the enemy fleet destroyed itself. In less than an hour, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was reduced to floating debris. But the victory had come at a cost. Lieutenant Amanda Foster had volunteered to stay behind and make sure the explosives went off at exactly the right time. Her sacrifice had saved not just the Zelhari homeworld, but potentially every world in the galaxy. As rescue ships arrived to pick up survivors, Jake received a message that would change human history forever. "Captain Martinez," came a voice he had never heard before. This is Admiral Keth of the Altarian Republic. We have been monitoring your battle. The entire galaxy wishes to know, who are these humans, and how did 12 ships accomplish what our greatest fleets could not? Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about Amanda and all the other brave souls who had died to protect people they had never met. Admiral, he said, we're just humans, and that's exactly what the galaxy needed. 2 months after the death of the Vorthak Queen, Captain Jake Martinez stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Defense Station 7, watching Zelhari construction ships repair their damaged homeworld. The crystal cities were rising again, their rainbow lights reflecting off the clean blue oceans below. Commander Lyra Veltar joined him at the window. Her crystal body was bright again, no longer dim with despair. The friendship between the human captain and the Zelhari commander had grown strong during the weeks of rebuilding. Your people work quickly, Jake observed, watching the graceful alien ships rebuilding the floating cities. We had good teachers, Lyra replied, with what Jake had learned was the Zelhari equivalent of a smile. Colonel Hayes and his engineers showed us how to build defenses into our cities, beautiful things that can also protect the people inside. Jake nodded. The partnership between humans and Zelhari had continued long after the battle ended. Human military advisors were teaching the peaceful aliens how to defend themselves, while Zelhari scientists were sharing their advanced technology with Earth. Any word from the other colonies? Jake asked. Lyra's expression grew more serious. 3 more worlds have sent distress calls this week. The Vorthak had many queens, Captain. Destroying one hive saved us, but there are others out there. Jake had expected this news, but it still made his heart heavy. During the battle, they had learned that the Vorthak were not just one fleet, but dozens of separate hives spread across the galaxy. Each hive was ruled by its own queen, and each queen controlled thousands of ships. What did the Galactic Council say? The same thing they always say. The risk is too great. The cost is too high. They will strengthen their own defenses and hope the Vorthak do not come for them. Jake shook his head in disgust. Even after seeing what 12 human ships could accomplish, the great civilizations of the galaxy still chose to hide behind their borders rather than help others. But not everyone was ignoring the crisis. Captain Martinez called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communication station. Incoming message from Earth. Admiral Blake wants to speak with you. Jake walked to the communication array and activated the quantum link to Earth. Admiral Susan. Blake's face appeared on the screen and Jake could see the excitement in her eyes.
Jake, she said without preamble, how soon can you get back to Earth? We have news. What kind of news, Admiral? The kind that changes everything. President Ross just signed the Galactic Defense Initiative. We're building 30 more fleets. Jake
felt his heart skip a beat. 30 fleets, Admiral. Earth doesn't have the resources for that kind of expansion. Admiral Blake smiled. We do now. 47 worlds have contacted us in the past month. They're offering technology, materials, even crew members. It seems that word has spread about what happened here. The quantum link flickered as more faces appeared on the screen. Jake recognized President Kevin Ross, but the others were alien beings he had never seen before. Captain Martinez, President Ross said, I'd like you to meet our new allies. This is Ambassador Tren of the Kepler Colony, World's General Vash of the Outer Rim Defense League, and Chancellor Wex of the Free Traders Union. The alien ambassador, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, spoke in accented but clear English. Captain, your actions at Zelhari have inspired many small civilizations. We may not have the massive fleets of the galactic powers, but together, we can make a difference. Jake was amazed. How many worlds are we talking about? 112 so far, President Ross replied. They're calling it the Deathworld Alliance. Deathworld Alliance? Dr. Lisa Park's voice came through the speakers. She was back on Earth studying all the data they had collected about the Vorthak. Jake, remember how I told you that Earth was unusually dangerous compared to most worlds? Well, it turns out we're not alone. There are dozens of other species that evolved on dangerous planets. They're all reaching out to us. Chancellor Wex, who looked like a walking tree covered in thorns, spoke next. The great civilizations call us Deathworlders as an insult. They think we are primitive and violent, but you humans have shown us that being from a dangerous world is not a weakness. It is our strength. Over the next hour, Jake learned about the massive changes happening across the galaxy. While the established powers continued to ignore distress, calls and protect only themselves, a new alliance was forming. Species from dangerous worlds, small colonies, and independent systems were coming together under human leadership. The plan was simple but ambitious. Earth would provide military leadership and tactics. The other worlds would contribute ships, technology, and crew members. Together, they would respond to every distress call that the great civilizations ignored. "Jake," Admiral Blake said, "we need you to command the first response fleet. 12 ships saved one world. Imagine what 100 ships could do." 2 weeks later, Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UNS Guardian. It was twice the size of the old Defiance, built with a combination of human engineering and alien technology. Around him in space floated 99 other ships from dozens of different worlds. Commander Ryan Clark, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the second fleet from his ship, the UNS Defender. The third fleet was led by Colonel Ben Hayes, who had been promoted to Admiral after his success in ground operations. "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from the Vega system. Fourth hack attack estimated 300 enemy ships." Jake looked out at his mixed fleet of humans and alien allies. 2 months ago, he had commanded 12 ships and thought it was a suicide mission. Now he had 100 ships and felt like they could take on the universe. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communication system, "set course for Vega. Maximum speed." As the fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jake received a personal message from Commander Lyra back at Zelhari. Her crystal face appeared on his private screen. "Jake," she said, "I wanted to thank you one more time. Not just for saving my world, but for showing the galaxy what it means to truly help others." "What do you mean?" "I have been monitoring the Galactic communication networks. Do you know what they are calling you humans now?" Jake shook his head. "The Guardians. Not because you are the strongest or the smartest, but because you are the ones who come when others call for help." After the communication ended, Jake stood alone on his bridge for a moment, thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, just taking their first steps among the stars. Now they were the leaders of an alliance that spanned half the galaxy. Dr. Park had been right about Deathworlders being different. Species from dangerous planets, developed qualities that peaceful civilizations lacked. But the most important quality was not strength or intelligence or advanced technology. It was the simple willingness to help strangers in need. As the UNS Guardian and its fleet raced toward another battle, Jake made a promise to himself and to Lieutenant Amanda Foster's memory. As long as there were people in the galaxy who needed help, humans would answer the call. Behind them, on dozens of worlds, new ships were being built and new crews were being trained. The Deathworld Alliance was growing stronger every day, and, somewhere in the dark between the stars, more distress calls were already traveling toward Earth. Each one would receive the same response that Commander Lyra had received all those months ago. "We're on our way." The galaxy had learned that while many species could build great civilizations and master incredible technologies, only Deathworlders would cross the universe to save complete strangers. And for billions of people on threatened worlds throughout the galaxy, that made all the difference. The age of the Guardians had begun,